Hello everyone, it is Christine back with another episode in our stitch along to create a dictionary of stitches. So this will be a slightly different episode. It's a special request by Valerie, who asked me the great question, how are you planning to put all of your stitches together into your dictionary of stitches? So I wanted to come on and share a couple of ideas. First of all, I'll share the approach that I'm planning to take to mine, but then I'll share another approach that I've come up with that you might want to consider as well. And then there's a third approach where you might want to just be doing all your stitches on a single piece of fabric and creating a giant sort of sampler, and you could use a large sort of vintage tablecloth or something like that to be creating it on. Or if you were doing less stitches or smaller sections, you could use a large sort of tray cloth or tea towel or something like that. But the first idea I want to share with you, which is the way I'm going to do it, is to create a fabric book. Now there's two versions to this. There's one version where we create a fabric book with fabric pages and a fabric cover as well. There's a second version where we would use an old book, ideally a book that's falling apart like this one is. So you can pick up old books at op shops or thrift stores or charity stores. This is an old book of the complete book of the garden. And I think it's lovely because to me that almost looks like a stitchery motif. And I thought I can kind of maybe do a play on and keep the spine as part of it. And it could be complete book of, and then I could do stitchery or something like that there. And then I could have dictionary of stitches as the sort of the main title. So that could be fun. And if you're going to do this, you'll want to find a book that is approximately the size of your fabric, or you'll want to tear your fabric to be the size of the book that you want to use. So what I've got here is some beautiful soft cotton, and they're actually from the sheets that I got when I first moved out of home many years ago and got a bigger bed, and they've been well used, they've been frequently washed, frequently hung in the sunshine to capture that beautiful smell that you get in summer or summer weather when you put your sheets out on the line. And they eventually developed a tear in them because they just got sort of so well worn and well loved. So I love the fact that I'll be incorporating something of myself in this, something that has been loved and enjoyed and had many happy hours of sleeping on it. And so if you are going with the idea of creating the fabric book inside of a book cover, you'll want to leave yourself a sheet, a folded section at the front and also at the back. It's okay if it's not a full size because you can always put another bit of fabric over it. But basically what these two bits at front and back are going to do, you're going to be sticking them in to your front cover. And if you're just using this sort of single width, which would be with a smaller spine, you're going to be sticking it into your back cover as well. And that's going to keep your pages anchored into your book. What we would also be doing, I'm just going to take it out of here now just so I can lay it flat on the surface. Let's just get it folded again. What you would also be doing is, let me just show you how this works. So it's a long strip of fabric that I just tore by letting it tear down the natural fabric lines. You could cut it out, but I find when I tear, you get a much straighter finish. And if you make sure you choose a fabric that won't be too many threads coming off it. These sheets are pretty good because they're a pretty fine weave, so they're holding their form pretty well. But what I did was measured the size I wanted to do, and I used a folded over A4 sheet as my broad guide. As you can see, it's a little bit bigger than that, but that was my guide. If you're in the US, you probably don't have A4 pages, but you could look up the dimensions of those online if you wanted to see the size that I'm using. But again, use whatever size suits you and whatever size suits the layout that you want for your little stitchery pieces. So as I mentioned, this first page at the front will become anchored into the book, or it will be used if I'm creating a fabric cover anyway. And then for each of these pages, all I've done is ironed basically in a concertina. So you can see it's still a full strip of fabric, but I've just folded it into equal portions, starting at the start. And then as I do each fold, I iron it down so it gets a crease. And so what it will mean is I essentially, for each page, I have a front and a back of the page that will form a single page. And what that means is that we're going to be able to stitch something down here. We'll have the stitching that's a bit messier at the back, and we can do the same on the other side. And then once we're done with attaching everything that we want to attach to the pages, we're then going to stitch around the perimeter, particularly along these two sides, but it's good sometimes to also run a stitch down there, and you can also run a stitch down here as well. And that's then going to hold your pages really securely together and give some structure to your book. And it's also going to hide the stitching behind this. So it's a really smart way of making a book. So hopefully that makes sense. So you get a big long strip, you work out what size you want your page to be, and then you basically just start folding over your fabric, giving it an iron, and then folding the next bit, and giving it an iron, folding the next bit, and so on. And once you get your little pile, you might want to put a little sort of clip on it to hold it when you're not using it, just so that it doesn't all kind of undo it. But you can always go through that process again to add the ironing to it. So in terms of what I'm then planning to do is I'm going to use this as the sticking in the hardcover book or attaching to the fabric cover page. I'm planning to have this as a dedication page and a title page. So I'll probably have Dictionary of Stitches. And then I want to do a dedication to my beautiful Nana, who has passed away. And she was an amazing seamstress and an amazing person. And I'd just love to be sharing this project with her, which I obviously can't do in person, but I think I can remember her and have her prominent in my craft room and prominent in the creation of this lovely project. My grandparents were amazing people that just helped so many people in their community. They were so giving, so humble. I mean, if I could live my life half as well as they lived theirs and in the service of others, I would be a thrilled person. So they are my absolute, when people say, oh, who inspires you in life, it was my grandparents. So to be able to honour my Nana, and in fact I might even honour my grandpa. He was an amazing creator of things as well. He was a carpenter and he could do anything with his hands and anything in the garden. So there might be a dedication to both of them, I think, there. So that will be that page. And then I'll leave this page here blank. And then I'm thinking the next page will be a title page for the stitches with the letter of A. And what I've done here is sketched out a design that uses each of the stitches that we have learnt as part of the letter A. So we have our Algerian eye stitch, we have our arrow head stitch, we've got our antique stitch, so planning to do a leaf shape across the middle. Then we have our Antwerp edge stitch there. We have my very favourite iron running stitch, giving it a whole side because I do love it, and I might have to do the beaded version because I absolutely love the beaded version. And then you might be thinking, where's my friend, the Armenian edge, or we should say my arch nemesis, the Armenian edge stitch? Well, I'm thinking I can, will we call it cheating, or will we just call it avoiding sort of unpleasant experiences? I'm thinking I'll use this little sample, which I did with you, where I was showing you the Armenian edge stitch. And I'm thinking I will use it as a little tab on the side of the page. And this might be a theme that continues throughout the dictionary of stitches, and I can put a little A up there. Now, whether I end up using the whole width of it or a section of it, I might trim it down and then just stitch off the stitches and then, yeah, let a section of it. Or the other option is I could incorporate it into the page itself down there. So that's the other option, then just do a smaller tab. So I'll have a think about that. But let me know in the comments if you would like me to do this stitching on camera, or if I don't hear from you, I'll just assume I'll do this stitching off camera and sort of show you what this looks like when I am done. So I won't get onto that stitching straight away. I'll wait for your comments to come through. So that will be that page, and then we'll turn to the next page. And this is where I'm planning to then arrange my stitches. So I'm going to do it in alphabetical order. Let's see how I go with alphabetical order. There we go. Ainu running, Algerian eye stitch, then antique stitch, Antwerp edge, Armenian edge, otherwise known as arch nemesis stitch, and arrowhead stitch. So it's quite handy. We've got 6 here. Now, sometimes if you had 7, you might, when you're planning out your pages, you might do, for example, 2, you'd do them a bit smaller, but have 2 next to each other. Or otherwise, you can just sort of go over the page. So if I did, for example, have 7 stitches, I could happily add another stitch over the page here. I'm planning to always have my title pages starting here, because then I can just have the little index sort of letters across the page here. So if I do end up with a blank, that's fine, and here I will have a blank, which means if I do find any other A stitches, I can add them in here, even though they won't be in perfectly alphabetical order. I'm not gonna stress about that. If all my A's are together, I'll be pretty happy. And so I'll end up needing to add more fabric into my fabric book, I think, given the number of stitches that we have. I think 140, 240. I'm going to have a look. I just know it's a big number. Let's have a look. How many do we have in this book? Yeah, 140 in this book, but then a variety of variations, and then we'll have the other stitches that all of you lovely people are suggesting as we go along. So I'm imagining I'm going to have to add some more strips of fabric. I've got plenty of sheeting left, and if I'm adding another strip in, what I'll do is just join my strip to the bit that I have to join it to, and basically the next page will just start around here, and then I'll just concertina it on. So you'll basically insert this into the middle of 2 pages, and then you'll continue along, and then you can do some little decorative stitches, or even put a little bit of fabric down to form the sort of seam. But I quite like the roughness of the edges. What I will be doing though is stitching around each of the pages as they get done. That's once you've added all of your pieces, done all the stitching of these down, and then you stitch it together, because that way you're enclosing your stitching in the back and also strengthening up the pages. So if you do want to set this up now, like I have, it will mean that as we get each letter of the dictionary done, you can then just get your little pieces in there, which will stop them sort of further running if you've got little raw edges like I have, and it will mean you've got the start of something if you want to be showing people what you're creating. And as I say, I'd suggest you just sort of keep them clipped together. These are just little quilting clips that I got secondhand from the Sewing Lair op shop. I think they were new, but they were from the op shop. So that's that idea. And you can do your book of whatever size, and as I think I mentioned, you can go along to an op shop. If you measure out what size you have, you can take your little measurements with you to the op shop and then find a book that perfectly matches what you want. But I do want to have a bit of additional space around it so that it's not fully hanging out of the book. So that will be potentially in that book. Will depend how thick it gets. Another idea that I've got for you is to, if you've got a wooden spool at home, which I don't, you can create a snippet roll where you create a long strip of fabric. Again, this is just another one I've torn in that same thickness as my book. And you can then just have all your little stitchery bits arranged. Now, if you did want to also, you could still have your title section. You could still arrange them in your sort of semi-alphabetical order, and then you'd have then your B, sorry, I think I've just gone off camera, but essentially you'd then be putting your B stitch down here and going down the roll that way. So it will end up quite long, I think, but depending on the size of your spool, you can fit quite a lot on. And now this spool I have made, this is just a temporary one to show you, but I've used just a pasta jar for this. So it's a glass pasta jar. I don't know if I can squidge you down. It's actually one I keep on my desk with smaller bits of tulle in it, which I use when I'm crafting. I like to repurpose jars for that purpose. Make sure you wash them well so you don't have any pasta fragrance sort of impregnating your stitchery. But if you want to turn this into a spool, you can cut yourself some, and you'd probably do a couple of layers of cardboard. You can put that at the top and at the bottom. And then you can cover that with fabric or with decorative paper, and that will create your own sort of homemade spool, because some of the wooden spools can be quite expensive to purchase, but that's just an idea to share with you if that's something that you want to do in a different form. And as I mentioned, another option is just, get yourself a beautiful piece of linen or vintage fabric or other repurposed fabric, and you can use that as your stitchery base. So they're the ideas that I have. You could also do a wall hanging where you're attaching these to a larger piece of fabric after the fact as well. So that's another idea. But let me know in the comments if you have some ideas that are different to these that you'd like to share with our lovely little community. I do feel like we've got a community of folks that have developed around this project, which just makes me like just incredibly thrilled. So I can't thank you enough for coming along with me on this adventure. When I started it, I honestly thought it would just be me now stitching away for the next 140 days, probably I'll end up doing this for a year probably, and I thought it would honestly just be me stitching away, kind of talking to myself, talking to the camera. But the fact that I've got people joining in and sharing the highs and the lows. I know our arch nemesis Stitch has thrown us a few of us for a bit of a dive, but yeah, we keep on stitching and we share the highs and share the lows, and so yeah, it's a wonderful community. So thank you everyone, and I won't keep you any longer, and I'll be back in the next episode to kick off our bee stitches. And if you do, let me know if you do want me to do the stitchery of this piece and to start showing you how I'm actually stitching these into here. Let me know, and I'll hold off doing that and do that on video with you. Otherwise I can just show you the finished effect. So drop me a comment if you want me to do that bit on video. Thanks everyone, take care, bye.